The Nile at sunset shimmered like molten gold. The desert wind carried warm sand across the riverbanks. Palms bent gently under the glowing sky. Shadows of temples stretched long across the water. Soldiers guarded the boats, their armor reflecting the last light. Merchants packed their goods as the river turned crimson. And there on the bank stood a man in purple robes. His crown of laurel glistened faintly in the dusk. His eyes were sharp, but heavy with thought. This was Hadrian, Emperor of Rome. He had come to Egypt to see the wonders of the world, to stand in awe of the great pyramids, and to pay his respects to the river Nile, the giver of life in this land of sand and stone. But what use were all these wonders if they could not bring him one thing he truly desired: peace? For though Rome was a city of splendor and might, it was a city haunted by unrest, and Hadrian was a man burdened by the cares of an empire. Across the wide river, he saw the lights of Alexandria twinkling like stars come down to earth. A mighty city, a jewel in the crown of his empire, a place where East and West met and mingled, where Greek and Roman and Egyptian customs intertwined. But even here, he knew, there were rumblings of discontent, for Egypt, like so many of his provinces, was a land of unrest, of rebellions and plots and power struggles, and Hadrian had come here seeking a solution, a way to restore order and bring stability to his troubled realm. He looked out over the water, his gaze fixed on the distant shore. What did the future hold for him? Would he be remembered as a great emperor who brought peace and prosperity to Rome? Or would his name be a curse, a byword for tyranny and oppression? The answer, he knew, lay somewhere in this ancient land, hidden among the sands of time. All he had to do was find it. As the night grew darker, the fires in the camp were lit, casting flickering shadows that danced and twisted in the night. Around him, the soldiers talked and joked, their voices echoing in the vast darkness. But Hadrian could not share their merriment. He sat apart from the others, lost in thought, his eyes staring into the flames. The weight of the empire felt heavy on his shoulders. The problems of Rome seemed to press in on him, suffocating him with their urgency. How could he solve them? What choices would he make? He knew that every decision he made would have consequences, not just for him, but for the entire Roman world. The fate of millions, perhaps even the course of history itself, rested on his shoulders. This was not power. This was obsession. Wherever Hadrian traveled, Antinoös was there. Not as an aide, not as a tutor, but as a constant shadow. They ate together in glittering halls. The emperor, the mighty ruler of Rome, and his young beloved Antinoös, sharing a plate of figs and wine. They strolled through crowded markets, hand in hand, stopping to watch a juggler or a dancer, laughing together as the crowds parted for them. They rode together across wild forests and dusty plains, the wind whipping through their hair as they raced towards the sea. At festivals, Antinoös sat near the imperial throne, not as a guest of honor, but as a silent observer. As the senators argued and plotted in the shadows, he watched them with amusement, knowing that none of it was about him. He was just a boy, after all, or so he thought. Behind closed doors, the senators whispered, "The emperor has lost himself. He forgets Rome for a boy." But Hadrian didn't care. He was in love, truly in love, for the first time in his life, and it was all-consuming. Antinoös had arrived in Rome as a slave, a property of the emperor, a gift from one of his conquests. But Hadrian saw something in the boy, something that made him buy Antinoös's freedom. Maybe it was the way his eyes sparkled with intelligence, or the quick smile that lit up his face. Whatever it was, Hadrian was captivated. As the years passed, Antinoös grew into a handsome young man, tall and athletic, with a quick wit and an easy charm. He was the perfect companion for Hadrian. They shared a love of poetry and philosophy, and Hadrian would often recite his own verses to Ant, who would listen with rapt attention. Of course, the other courtiers knew nothing of this. They only saw the cold, calculating emperor and his mysterious companion. They watched them ride past in their chariots, pulled by 4 white horses, Antinoös and Hadrian, side by side. Their faces turned towards each other, oblivious to the stares of the world. Hadrian was the most powerful man in the empire, and Antinoös was just a boy from Greece, a nobody. But in Hadrian's eyes, Antinoös was everything. He was the one who made the long journeys with him, bearing the heat and dust, always at his side. He was the one who listened patiently to his endless stories and woes, never complaining. He was the one who made him laugh, who challenged him, who made him a better man. They were an odd couple, the mighty emperor and his young lover, but they were happy. and that was all that mattered. Or was it? Because in the world of ancient Rome, there was no room for happiness, only power. And the senators were watching, waiting for Hadrian to slip, to make a mistake. They knew that if they could just get him to falter, to show weakness, then Rome would be theirs. Hadrian, ruler of legions, master of lands from Britain to Arabia, conqueror of Dacia, destroyer of Jerusalem, he who had the entire Roman world at his fingertips. Yet that evening his gaze was not on power, it was fixed on the boy beside him. Antinoös, a youth from faraway Bithynia, a province so remote it felt like the edge of the world. The boy's face was soft, almost carved by the gods. Dark hair framed his quiet, thoughtful expression. His lips were the silence of one who watched the world carefully. His eyes, deep and unreadable, held the emperor captive. From the first moment Hadrian saw him, something shifted inside him. It was not politics. It was not strategy. It was not the thrill of the chase. It was something new, something that made his heart pound like a drum in his chest. He had not known what love was until Antinoös. For 2 years they had been together, the emperor and his beloved. 2 years of stolen moments in the emperor's private chambers, hidden away from the prying eyes of the court. 2 years of whispered secrets and shared laughter, of intimate touches and deep conversations about philosophy and poetry. Through it all, Antinoös had remained by Hadrian's side, a constant presence in an ever-changing world. But now the time had come for Hadrian to let go. Antinoös was returning to Bithynia, taking a part of Hadrian's heart with him. The emperor watched as the boy prepared for his departure, his movements graceful and precise. There was no trace of sadness on his face, only a quiet acceptance of what was to come. "Are you sure you don't want to stay, my love?" Hadrian asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. "You know I cannot stay. My duty is to my family and to the people of Bithynia," Antinoös replied, his voice soft but firm. "I will return to you, my emperor, as soon as my duty is done." Hadrian knew that Antinoös was right. He had to return to his province. But that did not make it any easier for the emperor to say goodbye. As the sun set over Rome, Hadrian and Antinoös stood on the balcony of the emperor's palace, gazing out at the city below. Between them, the distance between two lovers, yet also the distance between two worlds. "Take care of yourself, my love," Hadrian whispered, his eyes never leaving Antinoös. "And remember, no matter where you are, you will always have a piece of my heart." Antinoös smiled sadly and leaned in to kiss the emperor. It was a bittersweet moment, the perfect encapsulation of their love, passionate yet restrained, hopeful yet tinged with sadness. As the kiss ended, Antinoös turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of Rome. Hadrian watched him go, his heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. The emperor was left alone on the balcony, the weight of his love for Antinoös heavy on his chest. He knew that he would never truly get over his beloved, that the memory of their love would forever be etched in his heart. But he also knew that he had to be strong, not just for himself, but for the sake of the Roman Empire. He had a duty to his people, to his legacy, and so he took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and walked back into the palace, the echo of Antonius's footsteps still ringing in his ears. But Hadrian silenced them with a glance. What could they say to the man who held absolute power? Love had made him deaf to politics. He saw only Antinoös. Their journey stretched beyond Rome's marble streets. Hadrian was restless. He wanted to see the edge of his empire. So he took Antinoös with him, into the world's mysteries. They traveled through Greece, where philosophers debated in stony courtyards. They walked among the ruins of great cities, their footsteps echoing in the empty squares. They climbed the Acropolis, hand in hand, and watched the eagles circling high above the marble temples. In Asia Minor, Hadrian explored the sacred shrines that rose on lonely hills. He and Antoninus exchanged solemn vows at the altar of Zeus, promising to be faithful to each other and to the memory of their lost youth. But even in this devotion, there was a shadow. The whispers followed them. Even here, in this corner of the empire, people said that Hadrian was too harsh on his subjects, that he had forgotten the lessons of his predecessors. But Hadrian was deaf to their complaints. He saw only Antinoös, and then, finally, they reached Egypt. The Nile flowed like a silver thread through the land, and the great pyramids stood like silent sentinels at the edge of the desert. Here, in this land of pharaohs, Hadrian declared Antinoös emperor, a puppet, yes, but an emperor nonetheless. Was this the love that set him apart from the gods? Was this the immortality he had sought? the lovers, the philosophers, and the poets. All of them were searching for the same thing, a way to leave their mark on the world, to create something that would last beyond their lifetime. Hadrian built roads and aqueducts, temples and tombs. He commissioned works of art and literature. He founded cities, and he named one of them after himself. Everywhere he went, he claimed the glory of Rome, the grandeur of Greece, and the mystery of Egypt. And yet, despite all his efforts, the whispers followed him. Even here, in the heart of the empire, they said that Hadrian was a tyrant, a godless monster who had turned his back on Rome. But Hadrian was deaf to their complaints. He saw only Antinoöpolis. For him, the world was divided into two parts, the world of marble and the world of flesh. In the world of marble, he was revered as a god, the bringer of law and order, the one who separated the sheep from the goats. But in the world of flesh, he was just Hadrian, a man in love with a boy, and it was in this world that he found his greatest joy and his deepest sorrow. What was Antonius's fate? Was he a victim of foul play, or some promise only he understood? Then came the night that broke history. The moon rose pale over the darkening Nile. Music drifted faintly from the campfires, and Antinoüs slipped into the water. Some swore it was an accident, a simple stumble, a cruel twist of chance, but whispers soon arose, weaving tales of treachery and deceit. Antinoüs, the emperor's beloved, had met his end, not with a splash and a cry, but with a push and a lie. They say the emperor's advisors, jealous of the young man's influence, had engineered the fall, orchestrating a stumble, a push, a desperate lunge for the shore. All the while, Hadrian stood by, watching, his face a mask of concern. The emperor's grief was a performance, some said calculated act to win the crowd. Over Antinoüs's lifeless form was recovered from the river. His beauty, they claimed, even in death, was beyond compare. The rumors grew like weeds, choking the truth. Did Antinoüs take his own life? Did he sacrifice himself for a greater good? Or was he the victim of a conspiracy, a pawn in a game of power and desire? The emperor's advisors, ever watchful, saw the growing unrest. They knew the whispers could turn to shouts, the murmurs to a roar, so they acted swiftly, dousing the flames of discontent with promises of justice. An investigation was launched, led by the prefect of the city, Quintus Cassius Senecio. He was a man of the emperor's trust, a loyal servant of the crown, but even he could not quell the storm. The evidence, it seemed, was lost to the river, leaving only unanswered questions and a trail of intrigue. Hadrian, they said, was inconsolable. He withdrew into his palace, seeking solace in art and solitude. But his advisors knew the wound was deeper than the surface showed. They urged him to marry, to take a new lover, to move on. But the emperor's heart, it seemed, belonged to Antinoüs, both in life and in death. And so the legend grew, passed down through the ages, a tale of love and loss, of conspiracy and deceit. Was Antinoüs a victim of fate or a casualty of the court? The answer, lost to time, leaving us with nothing but the echoes of what might have been. Others whispered it was ritual, a willing sacrifice to the gods, a gift of life for the emperor's future. But darker voices spoke of murder, that jealous hands had pushed him into the river. The Nile swallowed his cry. Hadrian stood frozen as ripples spread. Soldiers rushed. Too late. The boy was gone. Or the emperor fell to his knees. His voice, once strong enough to command armies, broke into grief. He tore at his robes. He cursed the gods. He cursed himself. Rome's master was powerless against the water. Days of silence followed. Hadrian ate little. He spoke to no one. His eyes were hollow, fixed on the endless flow of the Nile. But sorrow slowly became something more. He would not allow death to erase Antinoüs. If the gods had stolen him, Hadrian would make him a god. He ordered the city to rise from the desert, Antinoöpolis, streets of marble, temples raised in the boy's name, priests sworn to his memory, in a city not for emperors or generals, but for a boy, turned divine. Across the empire, sculptors carved day and night. Marble faces of Antinoüs emerged from the stone. Antinoüs as Apollo, god of beauty. Antinoüs as Osiris, reborn from death. Antinoüs crowned with laurel, forever young. His image spread from Britain to Egypt. No lover had ever been remembered this way. Temples filled with smoke and song. Incense burned in his honor. Wine poured on altars carrying his name. People prayed to him for healing. Mothers whispered his name to sick children. Farmers begged his blessing for their fields. If the boy had become a god, But behind the worship hid a question. Who had Antinoös truly been? Did he love Hadrian as deeply as Hadrian loved him? Or was he trapped in the emperor's desire? A shadow, not a man. Did he choose the river? Or was choice stolen from him forever? And his voice was silenced. The water kept its secret, but his face remained. Cold stone eyes, staring across centuries. Lips carved as if about to speak, but silent forever. Until death, Hadrian spoke to the statues. He whispered to them, as if they could answer. He touched the marble like living skin. Grief became worship. Worship became legend. Legend turned into myth. A myth stronger than Rome itself. Stronger than time. Today his statues stand in the grandest museums. Visitors stop in silence before his face. They stare into those calm, eternal eyes. Some see beauty, others see sorrow, others see captivity. Was he only a boy, caught in love he never wanted? Or a symbol forged by power and obsession? Or a willing martyr, stepping into the river with purpose? We will never know. That is the cruel power of history. The silence of the dead, the voices of the powerful. The truth drowned with him in the Nile, and yet his shadow endures. His story is whispered across centuries. His face carved in endless stone. His name remembered more than empresses, more than many kings. He became eternal in a way no mortal could. Perhaps that was Hadrian's final gift, or perhaps it was his greatest crime, to turn a boy into a god, and erase the man he truly was. A god sculpted from grief, a god sculpted from obsession, a god sculpted from love that would not let go. Others whispered it was ritual, a willing sacrifice to the gods, a gift of life for the emperor's future. The Nile reflected the stars like a black mirror. Some said the river itself demanded blood. Its waters had swallowed kings before, but darker voices spoke of murder, that jealous hands had pushed him into the current. The splash was small, almost too soft for soldiers to hear. Only the ripples betrayed the struggle. The Nile swallowed his cry. Night birds shrieked in the reeds. Hadrian stood frozen as ripples spread wider and wider. The torches along the bank trembled in the wind. Soldiers rushed forward, shouting his name. But the boy was gone. The emperor fell to his knees. Sand clung to his robes. His voice, once strong enough to command armies, broke into grief. He tore at the purple cloth, threads scattering into the river air. He cursed the gods who had stolen his joy. He cursed himself for letting the boy drift so far from his reach. The desert winds carried his cries deep into the night. Rome's master was powerless against the water. He who had commanded legions now begged like a broken man. Days of silence followed. The palace grew quiet, its halls heavy with shadows. Hadrian ate little. The golden plates before him remained untouched. He spoke to no one. Only his eyes moved, fixed always on the endless flow of the Nile. But sorrow slowly became something more. Like stone pressed into shape by a sculptor's hand, grief hardened into resolve. He would not allow death to erase, and if the gods demanded a sacrifice, he would answer with defiance. If the gods had stolen him, Hadrian would make him a god. He ordered a city to rise from the desert. Workers carved stone beneath a merciless sun. Columns rose like trees from the sand. Every brick carried the echo of Hadrian's mourning. Antinoöpolis, streets of white marble shimmered in the heat. Temples raised to the boy's name, priests sworn to his memory. Altars dripping with wine and honey, the air filled with chants of devotion. A city not for emperors or generals, not for war or conquest, but for a boy, turned divine by grief. Every street, every statue, carried his face. Hadrian carved eternity from sorrow. Across the empire, sculptors carved day and night. Chisels struck marble with unrelenting rhythm. The boy's features emerged from the stone. Eyes deep, lips parted, hair curling like a god's. Workshops glowed with torchlight through the night. Antinoös was reborn, again and again, in countless forms. Antinoös as Apollo, god of beauty. The marble shimmered as if touched by sunlight. Every curve of his body carved with devotion. Antinoös as Osiris, reborn from death, wrapped in divine symbols, standing tall among gods. The sculptor's hammers echoed like prayers in stone. Antinoös, crowned with laurel, forever young. The leaves curled across his brow, eternal springtime frozen in marble. His lips shaped in silence, yet almost alive. His image spread from Britain to Egypt, across temples, forums, and hidden gardens. No mortal lover had ever been remembered this way. Walls and columns carried his face, multiplied like a sacred vision. Temples filled with smoke and song. Incense curled through the air, carrying the weight of longing. Priests raised their hands in chants, echoing against marble walls. Wine spilled across altars, staining the stone red. His name, spoken like a spell, rose to the heavens. People prayed to him for healing. Sick children clutched charms of his face. Mothers whispered his name like a lullaby in the dark. Farmers begged his blessing before planting their seeds. The boy had become a god in the mouths of the people. But behind the worship lay a question, a silence deeper than any prayer. Who had Antinoös truly been? Did he love Hadrian as deeply as Hadrian loved him? Or was he trapped, a shadow inside the emperor's desire, a figure carved into stone, but never free? Did he step into the Nile by choice, or was choice stolen from him forever? The river's voice kept its secret. Its waters glittered, calm and cruel. His cry, if there was one, was gone, but his face remained, cold stone eyes staring through centuries, eyes that seemed alive, yet lifeless, lips carved to part, as if ready to speak, but they never would. Until his last days, Hadrian spoke to the statues. He whispered as if the marble could answer him. He caressed the stone like living flesh. Each touch was both prayer and punishment. Grief became worship. Worship became legend. Legend turned into myth. A myth stronger than Rome itself, stronger than time. A myth carried not by soldiers, but by shadows. Today, his statues stand in the grandest museums, cold halls where voices fall to whispers. Visitors pause in silence before his face. Eyes eternal, lips parted, forever young. Some see beauty, others see sorrow, others see captivity. Was he only a boy, caught in a love he never sought, or a symbol forged by power and obsession, or a willing martyr, stepping into the river with purpose? We will never know. That is the cruel power of history, the silence of the dead, the voices of the powerful. The truth drowned with him in the Nile, but his shadow endures. His story whispered across centuries, his face repeated in endless stone. His name remembered more than queens, more than many kings. He became eternal in a way no mortal ever could. Perhaps that was Hadrian's final gift, or perhaps it was his final crime, to turn a boy into a god and erase the man he truly was. A god sculpted from grief, a god sculpted from obsession, a god sculpted from love that could not let go. And so Antinoös remains, neither man nor myth, but both forever.